Hello, fellow anti-novelists, Lilligans, curious onlookers, and friends. Welcome back to the library, where, yes, it is another 100-degree day on the cattle ranch in Missouri. So, what better thing to do than hide in the library and hang out with you guys? Welcome back to this episode of Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order, the book that I am writing for you to help get your writing done. I'm going to address this question now because I've gotten it many times over the last few days. It's a question about what is the difference between a plotter, a pantser, and a puzzler, or anything in between. So let's get into it. First of all, for my plotters, a plotter is essentially someone who, in order to write at their best, they need to plan things out ahead of time. Often they're referred to as an outliner, someone that needs order in order to get their writing done. So let's dig into what that looks like, and let's discover together if you are a plotter or you have shades of a plotter. Number one, you feel lost while writing free. So sitting down and just free writing through a draft and finding your way through it makes you anxious. It kills your creativity. It makes you feel like you are untethered and you don't know where the story's going. Those are signs that you're a plotter. Number two, obviously, you need a plan. If you need to sit down and start with acts 1 through 3 or 1 through 4 and line out those plot points beat by beat, let's say you're using 8 major plot points, and you need to fill in all 8 of those and know exactly where your story is headed and how you're going to get your character from here to there before you ever start writing, those are signs you're a plotter. You need the elements to line up and be orderly, okay? So no chaos in your process. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't start here and write yourself over to here and then decide, okay, wait a minute, I think I want my character to go there. That's just course correcting as you're doing the writing. That still doesn't make you off of the plotter list, but maybe you just have a little more flexibility. And that's one of the key points I want to make. I don't believe that anyone is entirely one kind of writer, because we all have different seasons of our writing career. We have different seasons of our process. Maybe in the beginning, you are an extreme plotter and you need to know a really good heading for where that story is going to go. But after you get past that midpoint, maybe then you loosen up a little bit and you're a little bit more willing to wing it and let things develop as you write those later chapters. Doesn't matter. The important thing is you figure out your process and you find your way through the writing. So sometimes even the strictest of plotters will dip into writing by the seat of their pants now and then just to get the work done. That's okay. Needing to create in the moment makes you feel overwhelmed. This is one I can relate to. If I don't have a pretty lined out outline or structure to guide what I'm working on during a given writing session, I can get overwhelmed pretty quickly because my brain tends to want to think about the whole story all at one time. You can't hold all of that in your head. At least I can't. So having things lined out in manageable bites just helps me take only that bite, get that scene written, determine what the sequel is going to be, get that sequel written, and then start stringing those scenes and sequels together into chapters using the connective tissue of transitions, just like we've talked about in the episodes before this one. So, if you need to have that breadcrumb trail, those beats to follow, those are signs that you could be a plotter. You need to have source material to pull from. Now, this also dovetails into being a research-driven writer. I like to lean heavily on my research these days that comes out of my Zettelkasten for different character backstory, attributes, things they're interested in. All of those details come from my research. I don't like to just whole cloth make up things about people because I like there to be true elements to the fiction that I write. So if you enjoy historical research, digging really deep into character backstory and looking up what's involved in the career they chose, what was the college like that they went to during the years they were there, what street did they live on, and what are the shops that are down the street from where their house was in real time, in reality. If you enjoy researching all of that stuff and really digging into it as truly a research-driven writer, that's a sign you're probably a plotter, because you like to have all that stuff nailed down before you do the writing, and then you like to have it within reach as you're writing. The next one says, free writing drafting is hard. It creates too much friction. So for me, what that looks like is if I just sit down with a blank page and I'm just going to draft and dream and write as I go, I can do that for a little while, but pretty quickly I want to get back to my notes and see, okay, what comes next in the story and how am I going to draft that out so that I'm writing from this point A to this point B so that I can get them over here to point Z. I like to know what that looks like before I write. So if just free writing and freewheeling it and letting those characters say whatever they want to say and do whatever they want to do as you're writing them, if all of that gives you cringy, anxiety, overwhelm, that's a sign you're a plotter. Finally, the need to unpack your thoughts into order. I would argue this is probably the most significant sign that you are a plot-driven writer. If you need to take all of that jumble that's in your head, all of those ideas, all of those story threads, and pin them down on a page so that you can unpack them in a measured fashion and do a little writing and develop them as you're looking at them, but you have them all on the page captured, that is a definite sign that you are a plotter, and that having even a loose outline is going to help keep you tethered to that story, and most importantly, get the writing done. You know me, I am all about getting your words on the page. So anything that causes friction or resistance in sitting down to get the writing done, we want to get rid of that. That's why we're looking at this in detail. Let's go to the next one. Signs that you are a pantser, as in you like to write by the seat of your pants, without a plan, without a detailed outline. It's also called an intuitive writer. It can be called a discovery writer, or sometimes a stream of consciousness writer, which is exactly what it sounds like. It means you just like to go with the flow, sometimes write the entire story without any dedicated plan or outline, and just see where it takes you. And then go back and edit and redraft and rewrite and hammer it all into a finished story after it's all on the page. Those are hallmarks of a discovery writer. So you like uncertainty in the writing process. You are a brainstormer. So if you've got ideas popping and cracking and you're just following those ideas and letting the writing take you to its logical conclusion, and then you grab the next idea and you're popping and cracking and you just keep writing and drafting, and then you get to the end and then maybe you go back and start to fit things together a little bit, that's definitely a sign that you're a pantser. You don't need an outline or a heading to get started. Analysis paralysis, meaning too much analyzing will bottleneck you, or it causes friction or tension, or just flat out keeps you from doing the writing. If analysis and research and ordering your thoughts before you start makes you feel like you've been given a homework assignment that's going to take you 8 hours by Mrs. Wilkes in the 6th grade, you are probably a pantser. You don't want to have an assignment ahead of time. You just want to take off on your heading and follow those wild ideas wherever they lead you. You don't need an outline. You can intuit the story direction. You feel like outlining or planning in detail is too tedious. Again, if the idea of planning out your story or even outlining your characters gives you bad homework feels, or makes you feel like I can't even think about that, it gives me stress and makes me hate school all over again, or maybe you feel too confined and restricted when you start outlining, it just kills your mojo, those are signs, my friend, that you are definitely an intuitive or a discovery pantser of a writer. The structure makes you bored or procrastinate. Once again, the whole point of this is to get those words on the page. So if having structure makes you feel like, I can't even start, that's a sign that you don't need structure. You need to let your wild pen run free and just get those words on the page. One sign that you are a pantser is that sometimes your drafts can ramble. That's not a bad thing. That's just a statement of fact. Sometimes you just need to draft out that stuff. Just draft it all out on the page, blah, 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 let it all come out, and then go back and clean it up and turn it into that work of art that you want it to be. It doesn't mean that rambling is bad. It just means that getting everything out on the page in a rush is part of your process. And then, as they say in the movies, you'll fix it in post. That is a sign, my dear, that you are a pantser. Now let's wrap this up with the person in the middle, which is a puzzler. A puzzler is kind of the middle ground between plotting and pantsing. A puzzler is someone who does some of both. Now, my first thought here is everyone is a bit of both. Sometimes people need a little bit of an outline. Sometimes they just need to go for it. You can be both, but most people lean one way or the other and then have flavors of the opposite feathered in. So, my dear puzzlers, perhaps you begin with an intuition or in your zone of fascination. Thank you, Scott Scheper. Your zone of fascination is the thing that you could read, talk, and write about all day long because you love it so much. I would argue my fan fiction writers are zone of fascination puzzlers because you begin from a world that you already love and would love to live in. That's why you write there. So you're taking your own thoughts, your own story ideas, and you're puzzling those into an existing story world with existing characters. That is the true balance beam act of a puzzler. You need a draft or a scene to work from, and then you fit the options or the sequel to that scene into the story. So in that way, you already have a little bit of a snippet. Maybe you've got a few paragraphs, or you've got a scene, or maybe you've even got a chapter. And then you're going to use that scene that you've already written to say, okay, now, these are the three things that happened in this scene. So if this one results in that, and this one results in those, then these two outcomes are going to result in this. So you're literally looking at what you've written and you're puzzling out how you want it to go next. So that's a little bit of planning, but it's also using the pieces of what you've written in order to get the planning done. You work out of linear order. That's probably one of the biggest hallmarks of a puzzler. A plotter generally, again, this is a generalization, not a hard fact. Generally, a plotter likes to work from beginning to end. You like to know where your story begins. You're going to write towards the midpoint. And then from the midpoint, when maybe you have that character shift or that attitude shift, that mirror moment, however you refer to it, then you're going to write towards the end and wrap that story up. You're linear. A pantser, on the other hand, they might start with the last scene, and from the last scene, go back and write the first scene, and then whittle around in the middle, free writing style, like the pantsers do, and figure out, okay, what do I want this character to do? How does that look like? How do I represent that on the page? What other details do I need to add? Ooh, I could put a conflict here. So my pantser is figuring those things out on the fly. My puzzler is able to raise that to a whole nother level and completely work out of linear order because they don't need to write forward from beginning to end like a plotter, and they don't need to just freewheel around like a pantser. They can literally work scene to scene, chapter to chapter, forward and backward in time, and just puzzle the whole thing together as they write and plan. So that is a quick high-level overview at plotters, pantsers, and puzzlers. I'm going to go deeper into this when Kathleen and I work together in our class, which will appear this coming Monday and Tuesday, August 6 and 7, which is Fusion Writing. That's the class that lives over in LiLLipub, which is linked down below. So if you're interested in partaking of this next set of lessons on pantsing, puzzling, and plotting, please join us over in LiLLipub. Sign up for Fusion Writing and follow us along. We will have some lively discussions and no doubt make some discoveries and revelations along the way. Thank you again for your time. I always appreciate it. Thank you so much for subscribing. You guys are amazing and I love every one of you, and thank you for joining me. I'm about 21,000 words into the Zettelkasten for Fiction book. I'm barreling down getting it done, so I can show you as of this afternoon, because I am a bit of a pantser myself. You can see on the floor I have the next pile of things that will be written into the book, And I have a nice big chunk of note cards that are ready to be written into the next few chapters. So thanks again. I will get this posted for you. We'll get our next videos put up for the Fusion Writing class, and I will see you in the next video.